Good morning, everybody. Today, I think it will be afternoon when this is broadcast, so good afternoon. Anyway, today we'll be discussing anal fissures, a rather short topic, alright, but a very important one because a very common problem that patients face. You should be able to diagnose and manage it properly. Alright. Anal fissure is a tear in the anal canal extending from the anal verge to the dentate line. Anal verge, how you look at the anal verge is that wedge that you get between the internal and the external sphincter. When you do a PR, that you get a wedge between the internal sphincter, that is considered to be the anal verge. From there up, this fissure usually extends from there proximally up to the dentate line. It does not usually go beyond the dentate line. The other important thing about this thing is it is usually seen in young and middle-aged people. Unlike most other diseases which we say are more common, not most, I say a lot of other diseases which are more common in the elderly, this is usually seen in. The cardinal symptom of an acute or chronic anal fissure is pain following defecation. You have perianal pain after defecation. That is usually the symptom of an anal fissure, unlike bleeding PR, which is the symptom of a hemorrhoid. Understand? You can also get bleeding in anal fissure, but that is usually not that important. The important thing, or the important symptom that will tell you that this is probably an anal fissure is perianal pain during defecation. Right? I told you can also get bleeding, and like all other cases of bleeding from the anal canal, this is fresh blood. You understand? Yeah, this is a picture showing you an acute anal fissure. Can you see the fissure here? Yeah, just an ulcer, Now this anal fissure can be either a chronic fissure or an acute fissure. Obviously it starts as an acute fissure and then becomes chronic. Understand? And in an acute fissure, the break is only in the epidermis of the anal canal. You understand? So only the. Whereas in a chronic fissure, it can extend deeper up till the internal sphincter. A whitish sphincter you can see at the base in a chronic fissure. Secondly, you might have an anal skin tag associated with it. External skin tag as well as an anal polyp inside. At the level of the dentate line. So externally you get a skin tag. It's called a sentinel pile. Sentinel pile, why? It acts as a sentinel to the chronic fissure. So in a chronic fissure, it goes up, the depth goes up to the internal sphincter. You get a sentinel pile. There might be an anal polyp inside at the dentate line. Definite things are one, sentinel skin tag and the depth. Understand? You may not always get a polyp. So I told you again, I'm repeating, acute fissures are just a break in the epidermis only, whereas chronic fissures go deeper. Why is this differentiation important? The differentiation is important because acute fissures almost always heal with conservative medical treatment, whereas chronic fissures usually require some surgical intervention. The other important thing about this is the location. More than 90% of anal fissures are located in the posterior midline. If you all remember what we've been discussing, the anal ring, external anal canal, we look at it like a clock face. In the lithotomy, when the patient is in the lithotomy position, the anal canal is compared to a clock face. So 12 o'clock is up anteriorly, 6 o'clock is posterior midline. Then you have the clock face. You can describe it according to that. So usually anal fissures are in the posterior midline. That is at 6 o'clock. Understand? Yeah. The other thing about this is, sorry, you already reached treatment, is it? Sorry, something went wrong with these slides. Yeah. Now, there are various reasons given why this is like this. They say the blood supply there is minimal, then there is more traction of the sphincters in that region. Lots of reasons are given. We do not have a definite idea behind the etiology, but reasons like that. The other etiological factors considered in the pathophysiology would be, one, this usually takes place when the patient passes hard motion. You understand? And the sphincter is tight, the anal sphincter is tight, the motion is very hard. So obviously, you can just imagine a very tight sphincter, something, try to push something hard through it, what will happen? It will burst at some point, isn't it? Some point in the periphery or in the circumference, it will burst. That is supposed to be the reason why you get a anal fissure. So in our management, what we try to do is, one, we try to keep the motion soft, the fees is soft. The other thing is, we try to relax the anal sphincters. We try to take care of both the etiological and the pathophysiological problems. Yeah. Then coming to the symptomatology, I think that is more important because you have to first diagnose this, isn't it? I told you the commonest symptom that you get is pain following defecation. So typically what the patient will say is, last few days I've been passing very hard motion. I mean, I've been eating from outside, I'm not taking enough, all sorts of stuff. I'm taking hard motion. I'm eating parotas all the time. So I am passing hard motion. Then what happens? After the motion, I have severe pain in the perianal region. How long will you have this pain? Pain lasts for 1 or 2 hours. After some time, it goes off. Next day morning when I pass motion, again I get this pain. That is a typical history that you get. Hard motion with perianal pain immediately after defecation lasting for some time, which disappears afterwards. Typical history of acute fissure in anal. Sometimes the patient will say, besides this pain, I told you this pain is always a constant. Besides the pain, the patient might say, I have some fresh bleeding also. I pass motion, along with that I have a few drops of blood. In VAS, what is typically described is, you get a streak of blood along the motion, along the fecal matter. Because as the motion is going over the fissure, the blood is, you get a blood stain on the feces. That is what is typically not always seen. But bleeding you can get. So now the bleeding might be either in the form of drops or it could be even a jet of blood. Yeah. The thing here is, it is fresh blood, indicating that it is bleeding from the anal canal. You understand? That is what. That is the other symptom. Some people may complain of minimal soiling, staining, not fecal soiling, but undergarments get stained with pus or blood and all that, because of the discharge from there. Sometimes they also complain of pruritus ani, perianal itching, because that area is soaked by the discharge from the fissure and you get itching. So these are the common symptoms that you get. I am emphasizing this again. Pain following defecation is the cardinal symptom of a fissure in anal. All right. All the others are secondary, not secondary, but associated symptoms. Yeah, that is about the symptomatology. Yeah. The other thing is, most of these fissures are non-specific. When I say non-specific, there is no definite etiological cause. I told you it is either because of hard motion or tight sphincter or combination of the two. But sometimes you can have specific causes for the fissure. So probably we can call it secondary fissure. The commonest cause is inflammatory bowel disease, especially Crohn's disease. Inflammatory bowel disease, especially Crohn's disease, one of the commonest causes of secondary fissure. Syphilis can produce. Certain malignancies you might get a fissure or mimics a fissure. So these are some causes that you must keep in mind when you are seeing a fissure. I told you more than 90% of these are non-specific or idiopathic, if you want to call them. But there are a few. So when you have a fissure, you must, and if you think that it is looking atypical, other situation where you will think of atypical causes for the fissure is if the fissure is not in the posterior midline or anterior midline. Posterior midline most commonest, but in females sometimes you get anterior midline also. But if it is not in the midline, if it is laterally, you must always think of some other secondary cause for the fissure. This is about the symptomatology. And coming to examination, obviously the first thing, when you do an anorectal examination, an ARE as we call it, always inspect first. Alright, this goes for all exams. One of the most important reasons why you do that is because you will not detect a fissure on any other tech. You have to inspect to see the fissure. And I told you the patient will already be complaining of pain. On inspection, if you see a fissure and you want to do a PR, you try to do a PR, but you will not do it if it is very painful. You understand? You try to do a PR and you find that the patient is not able to tolerate it, you will stop the procedure. You will not go ahead with it. The reason is that if you continue to do a PR, the patient might go into vasovagal shock. You will never ever do a painful, PR which is painful to the patient. See, some patients are apprehensive, not because of the fissure, otherwise they are apprehensive due to, there you can talk to them gently and all that. But in a fissure, if there is pain, you will not do it. All right. So that is actually the only investigation that you require to do, or rather the only clinical examination that you require to do. Inspect, as I showed you in this diagram. You can see the, that picture. See, you can see the fissure. You can see it, see the fissure. Here, So, inspection is all that is enough. Sometimes, I told you, especially in chronic fissures, it may not be that painful. You can probably do a PR. And when you do a PR, there are 2-3 things that you will be able to identify. One, you will feel the fissure. Chronic fissure, that indurated break into this thing can feel. Secondly, you will find that the internal sphincter is very tight. I told you one of the pathophysiology, one of the reasons is that it's a tight engine. So you can do, when you do a PR, you will be able to detect that. Then obviously you must see whether there are any other lesions in the anal canal, rectum and all that stuff, which you will do. So this is how we go about examining this patient. Obviously, if you are suspecting a secondary cause, like for example, inflammatory bowel, you must look for other lesions and all that. I won't go into all those details, but always in an atypical presentation of a fissure in ano, always think of other causes other than a simple non-specific fissure. All right. So that completes the clinical examination and findings and the symptomatology. Then we come to the management. There is no specific investigation required for treating a fissure in ano. Again, I am trying to, I'm emphasizing another point, that management for an acute fissure is different from a management of a chronic fissure. So, besides a time duration, usually chronic fissures develop over 6 weeks. But more important than the time duration, it is the findings. I told you in an acute fissure, you only have a break in the epidermis. Whereas in a chronic fissure, you will find a sentinel skin tag. You might be able to see the internal sphincter at the base of the fissure. You might get a anal polyp at the dentate line and all that. That will tell you that this is a chronic fissure. So that is more important than the duration of the symptoms. All right. So conservative management. So I told you there are two things that we require to do here. One is to keep the motion soft, and the other is to keep the sphincter lax. And the third thing obviously is to relieve the pain. Now this first statement here, warm bath, is to relieve the pain. We can give the patient a sitz bath. Warm, lukewarm water, alright? Don't use boiling hot water and burn the buttocks and the anal canal. So you take warm water in a bowl, basin, add some, simply salt is enough, ordinary salt to it, and ask the patient to sit in that water for some time. It's a sitz bath using salt. This will relieve the pain. That is one thing. Then probably there is some osmotic action which will reduce edema and all that. It relieves the pain. Remember it as that, alright? The other thing, so that is to relieve the pain. Besides medicines, I am not going to medicines now, I am talking of pure home remedies. First aid. Then you have to soften the stool. The things that you can soften the stool is, the most important thing is dietary modification. And by dietary modification I mean you have to ask the patient to take high fiber diet. I hope all of you will remember what are the things which contain a lot of fiber. Green leafy vegetables is what we all keep on saying. Fresh fruits. All this contains a lot of fiber. So fiber, when there is more fiber, the stools are softer. It sounds contradictory, but it is The more the fiber, the softer the stools are. The easier a patient is able to pass motion. Understand? You take only protein, you get very hard pellet-like motions, which become very hard to pass, and you get all this fissure. So you'll ask the patient to take a high fiber diet, which means green leafy vegetables, a lot of fresh fruits, and along with that, plenty of water. Water is necessary to soften the stool. So this is the dietary advice that you will give. And you will find that a lot of patients are more than, don't worry about these percentages, 50%. Most of them will heal with just this, without any medication. Soft diet, warm, probably sitz bath, probably even that is not any soften the stools, that is high fiber diet. Then if it is still not, the stools are still very hard, you can use stool softeners like liquid chromafin is what we very commonly prescribe here, or you can use something to supplement the fiber, that is you can give Fibogel, Isabgol. Isabgol is a derivative from a plant and all that. Isabgol, which contains a lot of fiber. So all these things can be done to soften the stool. Then there are medications that you can use. Obviously for pain you can use, if it is so severe probably you can give some analgesics. Usually not necessary. I told you just the sitz bath is enough, warm sitz bath is enough to reduce the pain. Usually even that is not necessary, because I told you the pain disappears after an hour or so. Sometime after defecation usually the pain disappears. So very few patients will have the patience and the the time and this thing to take a sitz bath, so they may not do it unless it becomes that, the pain is that severe. Anyway, so you can address all. Then pain analgesics, so you can give analgesics. Then I told you we can give medicines like liquid chromafin or Isabgol to increase the fiber and soften the stool. The other thing, medicine that you can use is to relax the internal sphincter. This can be done using either nitroglycerin ointments, H2 channel calcium channel blockers like diltiazem. All this relaxes the internal sphincter. That's the same drugs that we use in hypertension, isn't it? What do you do when a patient has an angina? You ask them to use a tablet sublingually, isn't it? What do you do? It dilates the blood vessels, smooth muscle dilatation. Exactly the same thing is happening here in the anal sphincter. So it is exactly the same thing. Calcium channel blockers, same action. Diltiazem, same. So you get diltiazem ointment. Diltiazem ointments containing diltiazem or nitroglycerin, which you can use to apply locally. So what is advised is you ask the patient to apply these ointments half an hour before patient passes motion. Usually we all have a fairly fixed time of passing motion in the morning, isn't it? Usually, at least I don't know your age probably, because of your irregular lifestyle, you may not have a fixed time. But if you have a fixed routine, usually you have so then you will know when you're going to pass motion, so half an hour before that. So it will help to relax the sphincter and the patient will be able to pass motion without any problem. So this is the medical conservative management of, and I told you this works almost in 100% of acute fissures. Whereas when you come to chronic fissure, topical application, this we already discussed. Nitric oxide, all this we already discussed. Coming to chronic fissures. Chronic fissures, I told you, then this botulinum injection. Again, as you all know, botulinum relaxes the muscle, isn't it? That is why you use for facial lipstick and all that all that. So you can use that also. All that is all this is not usually necessary, but I suppose you can. If it is recalcitrant to treatment, or if it is does not respond to treatment, you can use this. Chronic fissure, I told you, most of them will require some sort of surgical management. And the choice or the pick for surgical management is what is called a lateral sphincterotomy. Lateral internal sphincterotomy. What do I mean by internal sphincterotomy? We are cutting the internal sphincter. As you all know, the anal canal, hopefully we can visualize the anal canal anatomy. There is an internal sphincter and an external sphincter, and it is the internal sphincter which has that involuntary action of keeping that stool within the rectum. Alright, if your internal sphincter does not act, what will happen? You will be walking around and spraying fecal matter all over the place. You understand? The external sphincter helps you to control defecation when that urge comes. You understand? So even if your external sphincter is not working, you will not have incontinence. But if your internal sphincter is not working, you will have incontinence. External sphincter is not working, what will happen? When you have that urge to defecate, you have to immediately go and defecate. Otherwise, you will have you will not be able to control it. That's the thing. So because the tightness is in the internal sphincter, the spasm is in the internal sphincter, that is what we have to relax. For that, you have to cut the internal sphincter. Now, you do not cut the whole internal sphincter, you cut only 1/3 of the internal sphincter. The width, if you look at the sagittal section, the width of the sphincter, not the circumference, the width, 1/3 of the width you will cut. And usually this is cut laterally, not in the midline. I told you the fissure occurs in the midline, but the sphincterotomy is done laterally. There are various reasons for this. I don't think it's it is cut laterally, and I told you you cut about 1/3 of the internal sphincter. So what will happen? That tension in the sphincter is reduced, so it becomes lax. That is the whole idea. You understand? Now this can be done in two ways. One is you can do it in a closed method where it can be done under local, but it's usually done under anesthesia, either spinal or a short GA. You understand? It can be done under local also, but it's usually not. That particular area, the perianal area, is a very painful area. Painful for the patient, not for us, for the surgeon. Painful for the patient. It is also sometimes painful for the surgeon because sometimes very difficult to visualize it. Anyway, so it is usually done under anesthesia. In a closed sphincterotomy, what you do is you use a number 11 blade and you make a small neck. It is usually made at around 3 o'clock position. Not 3 o'clock, 5 o'clock position. 5 o'clock position, anal canal, clock face, again, lithotomy position, 5 o'clock position, left lateral sphincterotomy as it's called. So you make a small incision in the epidermis, introduce a 11 blade, and you can pull down the sphincter if you want, or you can feel it. With experience you can feel the internal sphincter with the other finger, and you make a small neck in there. That is a close. Understand the principle. The idea is to cut 1/3 of the width of the internal sphincter. You understand? So this is the closed method. Open method, you make an incision in the epidermis till you reach the internal sphincter. You can see the internal sphincter, whitish band. You can either hook it with a right angle forceps and cut it, or various ways. You cut 1/3 of the internal sphincter. That's the whole idea. So that is a lateral sphincterotomy. I told you it's usually a left lateral sphincterotomy. Usually most fissures heal with this. There are a few exceptions. In that case, probably you will have to do sphincterotomy on the opposite side. We did it on the left, you will probably do it on the right. There are various things you might have to do. Anyway, so this is the treatment for fissure in anus, acute and chronic. In the olden days, though I still follow it, instead of the sphincterotomy, what we used to do is, we used to do what is called an anal dilatation or an anal stretch. That is what is given here. What we do in an anal stretch is you insert 6 fingers, into the anal canal and stretch it a little in all directions. The principle here is that you will break the fibers of the internal sphincter. It's arranged in a circumference, isn't it? You will break those fibers in multiple places. When you stretch, you cannot say that this will break only at 6 o'clock. It might break anywhere in the circumference. You understand? So you do that. Then again, so that will also relax the sphincter. Now both these procedures have a problem. If you don't do it properly, and if you dilate the sphincter too much or cut the sphincter too much, the patient will develop incontinence to fecal matter, either to gas or fecal matter or liquids, any of them or all of them. So incontinence is a problem if it is not done properly. This is believed to be more with an anal dilatation because you have no control over what you are breaking. So nowadays it is not recommended, though people do it, including me. I do it. It's a much simpler procedure taught to me, and I don't know. I won't go into the justifications for doing it. But the accepted procedure now is a lateral sphincterotomy. All right. So complication, I told you, then all those other things, bleeding, infection, all that stuff you can say. But the most problematic complication as far as the patient, besides all, most problem that we get is incontinence. So you must be very careful when you do this. Though it sounds very simple, it can be a lifelong headache for the patient if it is not done properly. Initially, the patient only had pain and a little bit of bleeding. But if you don't do a correct sphincterotomy, the patient will land up with lifelong incontinence. It's not always easy to correct incontinence. This picture shows you, see, this is an open sphincterotomy being done. You can see the fibers of the internal sphincter here. I told you the width, it's the width, not the circumference. Not the circumference, the width. 1/3 of the width you will cut. This is showing me the external sphincter. See, this red thing here is the external sphincter. Yeah, that's it. So this is about fissure and anal. I hope it was clear. Thank you.